Hi everyone, this video is part 2 of handling outliers. So let's see the agenda of today's lecture. In this video, we will talk about how we can handle outliers once we detect them. So previously we have learned some outlier detection techniques, but now our main focus will be to handle outliers. So there are several techniques and steps to handle outliers, including remove outliers. So you can remove outliers from the dataset, but you should be cautious when removing outliers, as this may affect the statistical properties of the data, because sometimes they may contain important information. So next we have Winsorization. Winsorization is a technique that replaces extreme values with the nearest non-extreme values in the dataset. So let's see the first method of removing outliers. In order to eliminate outliers from a dataset in R, the initial step is to detect the outliers through any of the mentioned outlier detection methods like box plots or Tekis method. And once the outliers have been identified, a new dataset that excludes these outliers can be created, which excludes all the outliers present in the dataset. So now let's move to our studio to see how it works. Well, first of all, I will read my dataset in the cars variable, and I will use the read.csv function, and I'm going to use the same CSV file that we have used previously. And here I will say head cars. Now you can see the columns and rows of the dataset. So at first I will load the library of ggplot2. All right. And now here, before moving forward, I will first, let's say, drop the missing values because I don't want my outlier analysis to be disturbed. So now it's better. So first of all, I will create a ggplot of the cars dataset, and I'll use the static function. I will say that create a plot for the column or feature of engine horsepower. And here I will say geom box plot. All right. And I use this parameter outlier dot color, and here I say red. Now you can see these red dots in the dataset that are outliers. So now, as you know that any points that fall the whisker of the box plot are outliers. So what we are going to do is to detect these outliers at first using the Tekis method, and then we will remove these outliers to a great extent. So now let's do it. At first I will say remove outliers, and in this function I pass a column for which I want to remove the outliers here. And you know that in order to detect the outliers using the Tekis method, first of all we find out the quantiles. I'll find the first quantile at first. All right. And then I will find the third quantile by doing the same. I will say take this column, and the third quantile is 0.75. And then I find the IQR by saying Q3 minus Q1. And now let's find out the lower and upper bound. For the lower bound, I will say Q1 minus 1.5 times IQR. And similarly, I will say upper and Q3 plus 1.5 times IQR. And here now I will just say call, and I will use the if else condition, and here I will say take the values that are smaller than the lower bound because they are outliers, and the values that are greater than the upper bound because they are outliers as well, and to the extent of the first and the third quantile. So now let's say call smaller than lower bound, or the values that are greater than the upper bound. And here I say any, and in the else part I pass the column. And finally, I will just return this column that have removed the outliers. So here I'm going to create a for loop. I'll say for column in names and take the names of the cars data set, and here I will use the supply function because I want to find out the outliers for only the numerical columns. So I will say take the cars data set, and the function should be is numeric. Great. Now inside this for loop I will say take the cars data set and subset and go inside this column, and now here I will call my function created with the name of remove outliers, and I do the same. I pass the cars data set, and then I pass the column that is going in the iteration. And finally, I create another ggplot, the same one as above. I use the static function, and I pass the cars data set and the column of engine horsepower to visualize if the outliers have been removed or not. I say box plot. Alright, so now let's read the function at first, and here I will create the for loop that is taking each numerical column and applying the remove outliers function on that column. And here I have used the turkeys method for detecting outliers at first and then remove them. Now let's create the box plot. So you can see the difference in the previous box plot that have the outliers here at 1750 and so on. And this is the new box plot of the same column that shows the outliers to a great extent. The first quantile and the third quantile, any point that are falling outside these quantiles have been removed because they were outliers. So that is how you can remove outliers from the dataset using the turkeys method. Now let's get back to slides. Next, we have the method of winsorization. So winsorization is an outlier handling technique that replaces extreme values with the nearest non-extreme values. In R, you can use the winsorize function from the DeskTools package to handle outliers by winsorizing the data. So let's move to our studio to see how this method works. All right, so first of all, what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to comment these line of codes, and I will just clean it. All right. So first of all, I will load the library package of dplyr. All right. And here I create a winsorize function at first. And here I pass the column for which I want to winsorize. And here I pass a variable of p that represents my percentile. So like usual, at first I'll find the first quantile, and I will pass the column here at first, and rather than saying 0.25, I will say p divided by 100, and just like that, I'll find out the third quantile, that is 1 minus p divided by 100. And here I say take the column and any point inside the column that falls below than the first quantile, because that is an outlier, replace it with the first percentile, and here I will say all greater than Q3, then replace it with Q3. And in the end, I just say return column. And after creating this function, I will create a for loop just like above. I will say for column in names and take the cars data set. All right. And I will use this apply function, and here I pass cars data set, and I use the function of is dot numeric, and I will say for each iteration of column in cars data set, just windsorize it. And I did it by using the windsorize function. All right, it looks good. And here I will create a ggplot. I will just simply pass my cars data set and then a static function, and y equals to cars engine horsepower, and then geometry plot, so that you can note the difference. All right. And I just forgot to pass one thing here in the windsorize function, that is p. So I will just say that windsorize the whole values in the dataset to the 5th percentile. Now let's run it. First, I will read my function, and then I will run the for loop for each of the operation of column. I will just windsorize the outliers, and here you can see the box plot. This is the first one before windorizing the outliers, and you can see that the highest value is 1000, and after windorizing you have removed all of the outliers that were present in the dataset, and now only these values are present that are normal. So this will help doing a further good analysis in your dataset, and you can also use the cleaned dataset that does not have outliers for the modeling purpose. So now let's get back to slides. Now here's an important note for you. It's important to note that the best method for handling outliers depends on the specific context and research question, and careful consideration should be given to the potential impact of outlier removal or handling on the result of the analysis. Now this is your homework. You just remove the outliers and apply the windsorize function, and also use the Turkish method. So here's the link of the dataset on which you can practice. Now good luck, see you next time.